Friends, we've all heard the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector who came to the temple to pray. And each made their own prayer. The Pharisee prayed, "Oh God, I'm not like the rest of humanity, and certainly not like this tax collector." The tax collector, on the other hand, simply prayed, "Oh God, have mercy on me, a sinner." Now, what's really going on in this parable? To understand what's going on, we must understand the society of Jesus' times. See, Palestine was occupied by the Romans, and different people responded to the Romans in different ways. The Pharisees, for example, focused on a resurgent following of the law, on their religious and national identity. But not everybody could afford that. Some people had to work for the Romans simply to make ends meet, to feed their families. The tax collectors were those people. Now, the Pharisees viewed the tax collectors as traitors to the religious and the national identity. The tax collectors, on the other hand, they knew that people despised them. They knew that what they were doing required repentance and mercy. Now, this social context is what gets played out in the temple, in the prayer of the Pharisee and the tax collector. Of course, the larger point that is being made for us is even deeper. I think what Jesus is saying to us is that our lives can fashion our prayer. When we come before God in prayer, we can only be who we are in real life. If we are an angry and divisive people, then our prayer is going to be angry and divisive. If we go about life judging and condemning people, it's going to show up in our prayer. On the other hand, if our life is a loving life, if we live it in love, then our prayer will be loving as well. And this is what we see getting played out in the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. The tax collectors knew they were in need of repentance and God's mercy. They knew the impact they were having upon society and upon the people. And because they knew their need for repentance and mercy, they more easily accepted Jesus. The Pharisees, on the other hand, began to develop an attitude of self-righteousness and condemnation, particularly against the tax collectors. And that showed up in their rejection of Jesus because they were coming from a place of self-righteousness and judgmentalism. And the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee really shows how the lives of these two groups of people got played out in their prayer. Folks, our prayer can only be who we are in life. If our prayer needs to be humble, then our lives need to be humble. And if our lives need to be humble, then our prayer needs to be humble. And Jesus cautions us about our attitude in life and in prayer. He says, "Those who humble themselves will be exalted, but those who exalt themselves will be humbled." Let's examine our lives so that we can stand before God and pray like the tax collector. "Oh God, have mercy on me, a sinner."